So welcome to the Comestri Fireside Chat series, and we're here today to talk a little bit about where we see the use of artificial intelligence in the production of content. And who better to discuss this topic than Abby, the founder of Okkular, the previous Deloitte principal that started this tech business that's a technology partner with us at Comestri in 2018. Welcome, Abby. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Ben and team at Comestri. Really appreciate you having me on the Fireside Chat. Quick background about myself. I studied in New Zealand, did my undergrad over there, started working with Deloitte in New Zealand, moved across to Sydney, predominantly working in the technology and media space with them. But in 2015, along with a couple of mates really, who are now co-founders in Okkular as well, started a marketplace. And while this marketplace wasn't an economic success, we got a lot of learnings out of it. But the most important thing we learned from it was the current problem of tagging, descriptions, automation that we will get into in a second that we uncovered because we were ourselves going through the pain of what a lot of retailers are going through right now. And that's where we started off with our sort of Okkular journey, if you like.
Very good. And we've been tech partners now for probably a bit over 12 months. And you know, you and I have often sat down and talked a little bit about the consumption of content, the consumption of, you know, how do we get better attributes as a product information management platform. You know, we're after more and more and more information on you know, product that sits within the database. As an AI tool, you guys are involved in the production of that kind of content. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into Okkular and, you know, your use of artificial intelligence in the production of that process.
Sure. So maybe if I sort of cover it in two parts. One is, what is the current problem? What is the current problem that retailers are facing and that we are solving? So as an example, if you go to the site for some of the retailers, even the larger e-commerce players, and you do a simple search on their website, you know, looking for a blue formal dress, chances are you would invariably end up with, say, 50 product recommendations, but giving you white shirts or, you know, yellow pants or something which has got nothing to do with the initial search that the user is doing. Now, imagine if you go into a physical store and you tell them the same thing. You know, user says, I want a formal blue dress, and someone walks up to you, the assistant gives you white shirts. Chances are you're not going to go back again to that store again. But this constantly happens online over and over again. And the reason for that is that the products haven't been tagged or labeled or categorized appropriately. And when someone does a search, you know, it's just picking up some certain sort of exact frames or exact wording, and it is showing it up. And this causes a huge problem for the retailer and the user. The retailer being, you know, they are paying lots of money to bring traffic to the website, you know, to Google, Facebook, or whoever. The traffic is coming to the website. But when they come over there, they do simple searches, it breaks, the user gets frustrated, and they leave. It leads to a bad customer experience. It leads to very low conversion for the retailer, you know, low ROI, and all those sort of problems that go from there.
Yeah, you make an interesting point there, Abby, you know, with regards to that customer journey. And that's for reasonably strict searches, you know, let alone when you get into kind of more natural language kind of searches. And you know, within our PM, you know, we're all about the consumption of that data so that we can provide a better UI, UX experience online. Talk to me a little bit about, you know, it's a fairly arduous task for someone to actually manually go and do all of that. The introduction of AI is there to speed up that process. What do you see in market at the moment in terms of, you know, how long it might take an individual compared to, you know, the throughput that you can have from an AI perspective, both in terms of, I guess, volume of SKUs, but also maybe in cost of that as well?
Sure. So one of the things that is fundamental to an e-com business is, you know, we always talk about understanding your customer. So we need to understand your customer. But what we are also saying is that, the product attributes should really be seen as the foundation of the product, the DNA of the product, because typically when a buyer or a user is coming to the website or store, they are looking to buy something based on certain attributes. They're not just going and buying a shirt or a dress. They have certain things in mind that when they're looking online, they're saying looking for a V-neck formal blue dress for a particular occasion or a particular style. And hence, being able to understand your product at an attribute level allows you to really understand your customer persona better as well. And that allows you to make decisions about what our customers are buying, which is what we should go and buy more in terms of the products. That helps with the merchandising capability, etc. So now coming to your point on the differentiation between doing it manually and doing it through AI, we recently did like at a very high level, and this will be different for different companies. Typically, we see someone doing it. It could be anywhere between sort of 4 and 6 minutes, 7 minutes per product to do the tagging, etc. And generally, it has been outsourced. It is outsourced to someone who may not understand a lot about fashion, about styles, about occasion. It gets subjective, so someone needs to review it and go from there. And generally, we're seeing as you increase the scale for that, there is a level of inaccuracy that seeps in, which makes it altogether difficult to replace. So, but when you use automation of AI or any kind of product, say the product that Okkular is providing, we did 100,000 products recently for a client or a customer within 2 days. So within 48 hours. And we worked out that if they had to do it manually, it would have taken them about 6 to 8 months to do that level of work. Of course, with multiple people thrown at it as well.
Yeah.
And really the response from the customer was, if we had to do it manually, we just would not do it. We would just put it out there, and which goes back to that cycle of it is arduous, it is painful, etc. And that last leg is not done properly. Retailers sometimes just put it out there hoping that customers will stumble across the product. You would never do that for your physical store. You would not just put in clothes in different categories and different areas and hope that okay, the customer who's walking across will then pick up the clothes and see whether they want that or not. So why would it be any different for the online store, and why would the result be any different? Hence the conversion rates are going lower and lower. And I think you also asked about the AI part. I think it's good to just reflect on why has this become so topical? Why has AI become so topical? I think there's a lot of different verbiage about predictive analytics and all that, but everything can become noise if your fundamental thing, something basic, something foundational, like, I need to know as a retailer, I've got 10,000 products and I want to know it by as granular as possible in terms of attributes there. If you don't know that, any level of predictive analytics, any thing that is slightly more cutting edge, slightly more out there in terms of in the retailer's mind, is difficult to do because you don't have that foundation layer done appropriately. So that's why we say it as that's the first layer that needs to be fixed, because there's been a lot of inaccurate information there. You need to almost remove that, have the right set of information, and on that, further enhancements, analytics can be done, but need to get that initial part sorted out clearly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the volumes there speak for themselves, right? And there was a report that came out by Wrapped Media recently, and it talked a little bit about, the marketeer's dream really around the future of content. And we hear a lot about headless, and that's based around content, trying to blend that with product. But then if you don't have those attributes at a product level, it makes it very hard to tag certain articles with certain product attributes, but then you don't have the content and the data that sits behind the product. And those kind of volumes are, that's pretty incredible that you can turn around 100,000 in 48 hours. Can you tell me a little bit about the accuracy of the model, does it take training? Like how, as a retailer, you know, in that sort of fast fashion or in that fashion space, you know, how would they go around looking at Okkular from a reliability perspective, content production perspective? You know, do they have to train that model? How does that come together?
Yeah, no, that's spot on in terms of question. So what we have typically is for certain categories, it's out of the box. It's already been trained. It's already been, say, if you take the apparel category for as an example, uh, that category we've already trained it for dresses, tops, and anything within that apparel space. So the accuracy is anywhere between 80 to 85%, which is an acceptable level for most retailers. Where the subjectivity comes in is some might have a different occasion, style. Some of that is a bit more nuanced to the actual retailer, and that's where a bit more training is done to make it customized for that particular retailer. But the way our product and we have built it is they can start off fairly quickly using the actual product, and then with every correction that they make, it gives out the attributes. It'll say it's blue, it's sleeveless, etc. V-neck, but they can audit it. They can say, look, we don't quite call it V-neck. We think this is a square neck from the way we have designed it, etc. And then it starts learning from those corrections that a retailer makes or the audit that the retailer does. And they don't have to audit every single item. Most what we have seen in practice is they would do it for the first month or so. They would get to an acceptable level. They say, all right, and we have come up with something called a confidence score. So they say, okay, if the confidence score is 80%, then you just automatically accept it and you push it back into the PIM. But if it is not, then you show us, and we are in the back end also constantly reviewing things which are what we call level 1 attributes, where we know if it is a white or a black dress, there is no subjectivity there. So for those ones, it's far higher than that. The one where there is a bit more subjectivity, it can change depending on the retailer as well. But really, it has been quite seamless to integrate and work, mainly because we built it to ensure that if it took up too much time for them to get that output out, they'll say, look, we rather just do it manually. And even though we know sometimes that thinking might not work, but so far the retailers we have been working with, they've been able to do it quickly. Now they've got it as part of their process. So the behavior has also changed. And that's an important part.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, definitely. Behavior is always the hardest thing to change. You've mentioned, we've talked a little bit about fashion and apparel, and you talked about some other industries. What industries do you see as being kind of key for this kind of technology, this kind of area?
Yeah, see, we started off with, so the way we have built our product is purely, it can learn different images, it can learn different, product categories, etc. But we sort of moving in two ways. One is different features within the same categories that we are operating in, which would be like, one is at a very baseline case is, sees the image, it generates the tags and the attributes, but we are also generating like alt tags. We're also generating synonyms. As an example would be like if the search word or we have generated polka dot, we've automatically generated in the back end dots, spots, so that the front end might have only polka dot, but if a user comes and searches for maybe not the exact word that is generated, but a synonym of that, then the product still shows up. So it just increases. So we look at it from perspective of what can we do to increase product discovery on the site, and increasing the metadata becomes crucial. So that is where we are doing other things within the same category. But talking about other categories apart from the ones that you mentioned, we look at it and we say, wherever visual can play a role, wherever visual is important and it's fast moving, it becomes, an area of an opportunity for us.
Yeah. And I guess, that kind of brings me on to my last question, really. A lot of retailers are sort of sitting there on day one going, we've got this problem at hand. and how do they get started on this journey? What would be a quick win for them, Abby?
Yeah, I think, see, fundamentally, and this, look, I'm biased, right? I'm obviously biased in this sort of scenario, but in that case, I would say with most retailers that I've worked with and I've seen now, getting that foundation correct before they start thinking of, maybe the shiny toy out there is, and the foundation is you need to get your product attributes, your filters, your search items, etc. Those things need to be put in place before it becomes too far down the road where it becomes, oh, it's just too hard. And then it becomes acceptable because, oh, this is the way it's already been done. And I think it should not be that complacency should not fit in. So realistically, we don't see it's a technology issue because the technology is there. It can be a cultural issue as well sometimes, because sometimes the intent is that if we're using technology, we want to see the outcome tomorrow morning. We use it tonight and we want to see some ROI on this tomorrow. And realistically, that doesn't quite fit in as well. There is a bit of a learning curve in anything. Is you see AI and automation or anything that we use over here, these should be used as enablers, as tools. And of course, if an individual could curate every single product description, every single attribute, and deliver it to their customer, they would do that. But the challenge becomes doing that at scale. And I think that's what retailers should keep in mind, that the having the ability to think of that the ROI might be different on this, and we should not expect an immediate return within a very short period. I think that will be good. But the easy one would be, if they're using obviously the Comestri PIM, being able to just ensure that the baseline foundation stuff, the basics are there before they further any of the opportunity that, being able to be on marketplaces that you guys help them be, I think is equally important.
Yeah, valuable points there, Abby. I mean, we're all about the, owning more of the search space, whether you're on marketplaces or on your own e-commerce site, and that's got to start with, the product data that you have in hand, and the more you have, then the more beneficial it can be, and the more product search space you own. Mate, got to wrap up. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Abby. We'll catch up soon in person, hopefully. It's been a wee while, but thanks very much. And on behalf of Comestri, we really appreciate your time and your thoughts.
No, thank you. Thanks, Ben and Cam and the team at Comestri to set this together. I think it's been great to be able to share some insights and be able to help out. But no, thank you for all the support from Comestri as well. I think it's been fantastic.
Good stuff.
Thank you. All right, mate. Thank you.